Giovanni Crawford.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm a little nervous. I typically don't never tell my story. I really like to just do the work. But I'm gonna do it for Whitney. It's a great cause. Thanks, Whitney. My name is Giovanni. I'm 35 years old. I'm a son, a big brother, a father, a leader, a survivor. And today I stand here as someone committed to reducing gun violence because I've lived on both sides of it. I was just a boy when my stepfather was killed by gun violence, 8th grade, still trying to figure out homework, friends, who I was becoming, and suddenly death was sitting in my living room. That loss changed my life, but it wasn't simple grief. He was also the man who abused my mother. So while the community talked about tragedy, I was wrestling with confusion. How do you grieve for someone who hurts the person you love the most? How do you cry for someone who caused pain in your home? I didn't have the language for it back then, I just carried it. When you're one of two oldest out of 6 kids raised by a single mother, struggling through poverty, you grow up a lot faster than you're supposed to. The oldest kids end up taking on responsibility early, helping look after the younger ones, while your mom worked crazy hours just trying to make ends meet, basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. But one thing about my mom, I always admired her resilience and her hard work ethic. No matter how hard things got, she kept pushing forward for us. I love my biological father, but growing up, he wasn't there during some of the moments I felt like I needed him the most. And when you're a young boy growing up in neighborhoods filled with violence and poverty, especially in single-parent household, it doesn't take long before the streets start raising you. Those same corners and blocks that we hang around on are the same places where a lot of young lives end. I grew up in Westwood, where sirens with background noise and memorial t-shirts were common. Poverty wasn't an abstract statistic. It was empty refrigerators, lights getting cut off, and friends trying to survive however they could. Violence wasn't shocking, it was expected. And at 17, I became a part of that cycle. I was shot in my neighborhood, and I remember the sound, the confusion, the disbelief, and then the quiet thought that scared me the most. This is normal. Well, that's what trauma does. It convinces you that dysfunction is just life. It teaches you to move on without healing, to wear survival like a badge of honor. Now, I had already been familiar with death growing up where I did, but even then I knew I didn't want my life to end that night. When that bullet hit my leg, I turned and ran, and the only thing that was going through my mind was my mom. And I kept thinking, please don't let my mom find me dead out here. I got away and I got to the hospital, and I'll never forget when they brought my mom back to see me, because I could see the fear in her eyes, the worry, the relief, all at the same time. We just hugged each other tightly. I was fortunate enough to recover, graduate high school, and continue my football career at Wilmington College. For the first time in my life, I was away from my mom, my siblings, and the community that raised me. It was a bittersweet. On one hand, I knew I was stepping into an opportunity that could change my life, but on the other hand, leaving home was heavy on my heart. Being one of the oldest in my family, I had always felt responsible for protecting my mom and looking after my younger siblings. That wasn't something you could just turn off when you leave for college. Adjusting wasn't easy. I was suddenly around people and environments that were completely different from what I grew up in, but I pushed through it. My first year went well. I was doing well in the classroom and on the football field. One of the best decisions I ever made was going to college. College gave me exposure. It expanded my mind and introduced me to healthier environments and healthier ways of thinking. It helped me recognize how many trauma responses I had normalized growing up. For the first time, I began to understand what I had experienced, and more importantly, the healing and growth were possible. Then everything changed. I found out my girlfriend was pregnant and we were going to have our son. I remember feeling nervous, overwhelmed, and honestly in disbelief. I didn't know what being a father looked like because I never had my own father there to show me. I didn't have the blueprint or guidance. My mom offered to help raise my son so I could stay in college. She told me to focus on school and football, and she would help carry the load. But after watching her struggle for years raising me and my siblings by herself, working long hours, sacrificing everything, there was no way I could put that responsibility back on her shoulders. So I made the decision to come back home. Coming back home meant going right back into the same environments I have fought so hard to leave. The same community, the same struggle, the same influences and friends I had grown up with. And the reality is, in some communities, even when you're not looking for trouble, trouble has a way of finding you. Coming back home changed everything. At first, I told myself I was just here to take care of my responsibilities, to be a father, to step up in ways I didn't see growing up. But when you go back to the same environment, surrounded by the same pressures and influences, it doesn't take long before life starts pulling you back into old patterns. And like I said before, sometimes in certain communities, even when you're not looking for trouble, trouble finds you. When I was 20 years old, I ended up catching 2 high-profile felonious assault charges. It made the news. My name was everywhere. I remember waking up one day and realizing life had gone from being a college football player with potential to being labeled a violent young black man in the headlines, and then things escalated even more. The U.S. Marshals raided my mom's house looking for me. Imagine that moment. My mom's home, the same place where she worked so hard to keep a roof over our heads and protect us being surrounded by law enforcement because of the choices I made. That moment sat heavy on my heart. I felt like I had become the very thing my mom spent her whole life trying to protect us from. That was one of the lowest points of my life. That was one of the most lowest points of my life. I felt lost, angry, embarrassed. Like everything I had slipping through my hands, I started realizing that the same streets that raised me were also slowly destroying me. But sometimes rock bottom forces you to look in the mirror. I had to ask myself a real question. Was you going to keep going down this path, or was I going to change the direction of my life? Because the truth is, I knew too many people who had never got that chance to make that choice. Friends who were locked up, friends who were buried too young, families destroyed by the same cycles of violence. The charges were ultimately dismissed, and that moment became a turning point for me. I knew I didn't want to keep living that way. I just wanted to change, grow, and become a man, a better man. I started doing the work on myself mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I started learning from my mistakes instead of running from them. And over time, something powerful happened. That same pain, that same trauma, them same experiences that once felt like they were going to destroy me became the very things that gave my life purpose. But even in that environment, there was still light. There's another side of Westwood that people don't always hear about, the power of community in East Westwood. There was a center that became a safe haven for many of us growing up. It gave us structure, education, fun, mentorship. More importantly, it showed us that life could be better, bigger than what we saw on our blocks every day. That center didn't just keep us busy, it planted seeds, seeds of hope. Seeds that told us we matter and that our futures didn't have to be defined by the circumstances around us. Even with so many odds stacked against me, poverty, violence, trauma, and adult responsibilities at a young age, I was fortunate enough to have people who poured into me and believed in me. Today, that journey has came full circle. I now have the privilege of working in violence prevention, dedicating my life to helping reduce gun violence and change the narrative in communities like the ones that I was raised, that raised me. Every day I have the opportunity to work alongside clinicians and surgeons who are doing the critical work of saving lives, but our mission doesn't stop when the physical wound is treated. We take it a step farther. We meet people in some of the most traumatic moments of their lives and work to promote alternatives to violence, offer support, and help break cycles that have taken too many lives far too long. We try to bring hope into spaces that often feel hopeless. We try to stop the next act of violence before it happens. Because I've seen what gun violence do to families. I've seen the tears that mothers carry, the same kind of tears my mother fought through while raising us. And I've seen the pains of mothers like the one Dr. Goodman spoke about, the mother of the 17-year-old kid who was given another chance at life because of a team of people came together and refused to let his story end that night. We all know the work doesn't stop here. Saving one life doesn't erase the violence that exists in our communities, but it's a start. It's a step towards healing, a step towards changing the story that has been written for far too many young people. The community that raised me taught me resilience. The mentors who poured into me showed me it was possible. College gave me perspective, and now this work gives me purpose. And if we continue choosing healing over hopelessness, accountability over excuses, and community over isolation, then together we can begin to change the narrative and help our communities heal. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Absolutely amazing. Thank you. So proud of you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Giovanni.
No problem. Thank you. That was hard.
Giovanni, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story.